I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by a lady whose attendance on this show is very long overdue, as I mentioned earlier. Please give a very warm welcome to patient advocate and busy mum, Rebecca Kudyk. How are you, Rebecca?
I'm good, thank you. It's really good to be on, and as you said, long overdue. So
Well, no, like I say, we are a chronic illness channel. If we didn't facilitate people having to be flexible and move things around their health, then we wouldn't be very good at what we do. So, that's not a problem at all. But thank you for joining us. Obviously, I know a little bit about you from social media and other places where we've interacted. But for anyone that maybe isn't familiar with who you are, do you want to just give us a little bit of an overview, and then we'll get into things like diagnosis journeys and that?
Yeah, no, of course. So I'm Rebecca Kudyk. I'm 34, very nearly 35, so sort of clinging on to my early 30s. Well, it's not really, 34 is not really early, is it? But anyway.
I'd class it as early. As a man who's nearly 40, I'd absolutely class it as early 30.
Yeah, well, so basically I have had aches and pains for as long as I can remember. And I was about 8 years old, and I remember crying on the worktops just in absolute agony. And I'm 6'1", so I've always got shunned off as having growing pains. So it's been for a long, long time. I've got 2 little boys. I've got a 4-year-old similar to your son's age, Joel, and a little 6-month-old baby. So it's been a real challenge, obviously, adjusting back into the newborn life, let alone with all of my medical issues. I also work full-time in the city. I'm a conduct risk specialist. Normally when I say that, people go, oh, how boring. But it is actually quite interesting. I like to think that my job is to make life better for customers at the end by helping companies do their jobs better and conducting themselves better. So I like to think I'm a good Samaritan. I'm also a trained counsellor. I trained for a number of years following a long battle with my own mental health. And I found that a really good coping technique for me was to actually learn the trade, learn the actual industry and apply those techniques to myself in everyday life and sort of help other people as well. So I have sort of 2 strings to my bow in terms of sort of my day-to-day job and my real passion, which is the advocacy for both mental health and obviously physical health as well. I've got my Instagram page in the chronic illness space, which I try to keep updated and share, impart my wisdom as much as I can. So that's me in a nutshell, really.
Oh, that's amazing. And there's already something there I didn't know about the mental health trend. So, that feels like something we should come on to. But I can absolutely sympathise with you, Sam, about the whole, being a newborn mum and that again. Because I was literally saying to my wife the other day, now I've got a 4.5, well, nearly 5-year-old. I've never felt so far away from wanting to be back in that newborn. So I've just got comfortable. Then memories have just started to fade. And so, I wish you well.
So much has changed. So, yeah.
Yeah, scary job. You're doing great, and you look really well for it as well. So it must be working for you. So do you want to? I know there's a lot going on in terms of you've got multiple conditions. I think that's fair to say, isn't it? Do you want to maybe walk us through how those presented? Because I know one in particular, you sort of got quite young for the condition it was in osteoarthritis, I believe. Do you want to walk us through what that looked like and how that presented and everything?
Yeah, cool. So obviously I briefly touched on it in the introduction that from as young as I can remember, I remember being in a lot of pain. And because of my height, it was very much shunned as, it's just growing pains. It's just growing pains. So I left it. And I remember I used to work in Morrison's when I was at uni as a shelf stacker. And I remember going to the bottom shelf and not being able to get up and my knee sort of locking. And I just was like, this doesn't feel right. But the doctors have said there's nothing wrong with me. That's fine. Got to about 25, I was in more and more pain. And I got a job that had private insurance. And I thought, do you know what? I'm going to go and get this checked out properly. Had an MRI on both of my knees and they found that I had grade 4 osteoarthritis. So effectively, all of my cartilage is gone. There's nothing left. Also, the joint that my kneecap runs through is completely flat. So I used to get the joint slipping off and dislocating quite often. So 10 operations later, I am now waiting for a double knee replacement, but they won't go near me until I'm at least 40 because obviously there's a short amount of years. I think it's like 10, 20 years that they're actually effective and they'd have to redo it again. So I think it's about prolonging my life without having to be in a wheelchair and almost I've got to keep living to the point, where it's so unbearable. I have to have the knee replacement. Unfortunately, I haven't had any support from the NHS. I've had to do all of this private. And I know that a lot of people don't have that luxury. So I can understand that a lot of struggles are going to be different from mine, because I didn't have the access to the NHS, so a lot of people else aren't. I mean, as well, my own GP even said to me, "How have you got osteoarthritis? That's for old people." I mean, that's the
that shows you what we're up against, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I know I still have a role as an advocate whilst those things still keep coming up.
But as well, from the 10 operations, I then got diagnosed. I went through all the rheumatology routes, and I'm not sure if people are aware, but fibromyalgia is more of a diagnosis of elimination. So it's basically all your inflammation markers and ruling things out, and then sort of being left with fibromyalgia. So obviously you've got your trigger points and your pain points as well. So they think that might have been caused from the trauma of the operations. It comes from either a mental or a physical trauma, which is quite interesting. And people don't always realise that. It can come from an emotional trauma and then obviously cause a physical response in your body. I've also got hypermobility syndrome, which doctors think is why I have such trouble with my arthritis, because effectively everything was impacting through my joints as opposed to the ligaments and things that are meant to obviously absorb the shock. And last but not least, ME. I've got on top of that, or chronic fatigue syndrome. And then my mental health, I've got anxiety and depression. But I think a lot of that, and through a lot of people I've spoken to in the chronic illness community, the chronic illness and the mental health elements sort of sit hand in hand, because people realise it's not just a physical battle, it's absolutely a mental battle as well, especially in the midst of a flare-up. So
yeah, and the good thing is the thought on that is starting. Like I was at EULAR this year in Italy, and the amount of talks I saw where they were actually starting to refer to the mental health side as a comorbidity. So I went for one regarding psoriatic arthritis because that was my interest, and to hear medical professionals start talking about depression, low mood as a comorbidity rather than this other thing when clearly we're all dealing with it. That reassures me, because once it starts getting classed as comorbidity, you'd like to think research and resources and development will happen in that area. So I'm sorry you experienced all that, and like the fatigue thing must be massive. I've got one condition and my fatigue is crippling. Like, however, your body must be working so hard with the osteoarthritis and the fibro and all the other stuff going on. It must be absolutely exhausting. So what sort of role does that play? Because often people talk about the damage and the pain, but what sort of role does the fatigue play?
I think for me, with my job, I have to be at the top of my game quite often. I'm making quite important decisions and things. So I find it really hard, because often with fatigue with me comes brain fog.
Yeah.
It presents in the way that I know what I want to say, but the words sort of escape me being able to actually say them in a sentence. And it can make you feel like quite silly, really, like that you're not competent when clearly you are. So in work, it really presents like that. I'm really lucky in my company now that they're absolutely incredible. So if I have to go for a nap in the afternoon for an hour, I'm able to be transparent about that and explain why. And that's really, really good. But in my last job, I had my bonus actually taken away from me just because I was missing too much time from work. I mean, I delivered all of my work. All of my work was good. They said, we don't have an issue with your performance. We have an issue with the level of absence. And I just feel like they were focusing on completely the wrong thing. And in the end, it drove me away as an employee, because I'd make the decision that I wasn't going to live like that, and I wasn't going to allow myself to be in that environment. But I'm really, really lucky now. I think as well, it's compounded now by the fact that I am doing nights with a baby.
Yes.
I'm lucky. I've got an incredibly supportive husband that does half of the nights with me. And if I need, he will do an extra feed. But interestingly, with me, when I was pregnant and for the first few months afterwards, my fibromyalgia all but disappeared. It was really interesting. It's happened both pregnancies. Experts think it's to do with the mix of hormones and things. I mean, my arthritis was still there, but I normally take cocodamol every day. And during my pregnancy, I survived on paracetamol occasionally, which is absolutely incredible. Yeah. I mean, I could be pregnant forever, but I don't really want to be doing that.
No, I think that might have a bit more work in the long run. You might have to pay that back at some point. But yeah, no, you're not the first person that's told me that. Not somebody I've had on the show, but somebody close to me had a very similar experience with a really debilitating chronic illness. And yeah, they got a good 6 months sort of respite, because I think the thing is, the way I try to wrap my head around it, and I'm always really open on the show, we put it in all the show descriptions, not medically trained, etc. But like, the way I see it, if my immune system's got something else to do, then it's not attacking healthy tissue. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it makes you wonder, with the all those processes going on with pregnancy, that it's given the body something else to focus on, isn't it?
Yeah, well, they say when you're pregnant, you're on the edge of like human endurance, and I know we feel like that most of the time anyway. He's 6 months old now, and slowly but surely, it's awful again now. I mean, I had a flare so bad last week that it genuinely felt like all the bones in my body were broken. Like, that's how bad it was, and it's just really, really difficult to manage, obviously, with the little one as well. So
yeah, and then that's something we'll dive into. But one thing I just thought of when you said that is, like, how do you manage like having multiple conditions, working out what's going on? Like, because I have chronic pain on top of my long-term health condition.
yeah,
Sometimes that could be a bit of a minefield about what came first, chicken and egg, and all this sort of thing. How do you cope when you've got multiple sort of autoimmune sort of processes going on there, of treating and managing that? Or do you just kind of blanket it and treat it the same?
no, I have it's a different pain.
Okay.
My arthritis pains are really deep, full-on ache, sort of like a really deep, intense ache, whereas fibromyalgia is a little bit more of a full body, almost like you've pulled muscles, I'd explain mine as. So they are quite different, and I can treat them accordingly. What's frustrating for me is my osteoarthritis responds to me sort of getting up and going a bit more. But the fibromyalgia is battling against that, saying you need to rest, you need to rest. So I tend to go with whatever the pain is that I feel most predominantly, is whether I determine whether I need to rest or whether I need to like do a bit of exercise. A bit of walking really helps me. I walk my oldest to school every day, and that little, it's a mile each way, and just that little bit of walking has completely transformed my pain level and how I feel. And I think my mental health about it as well, like being out in the fresh air and getting out of the house, getting out of bed, it changes your mental perspective as well.
Yeah, 100%. My walking has just saved me. So when my condition really went down the pan a little bit in pandemic, like so many of us did when we weren't being treated or looked after, and walking, like you say, it isn't just the movement that arthritis seems to really respond to. Although I didn't realise OA had that effect as well, because obviously OA is quite destructive, isn't it, in terms of if its behaviour. It's like flare and remission kind of stuff we get going on with sort of rheumatoid arthritis and psoriatic arthritis. But in just that, it's just getting outside, isn't it? Getting that headspace and feeling like you've done something. Because some days you just need to feel like you've ticked something off your list. I don't know about you.
I agree. Well, I think as well, modern society seems to think that burnout and being overproductive and busy all the time is like successful. And I think that we have that programmed into our head. I know especially a massive thing that it's taken me to understand is like rest isn't a reward. You need rest in your time schedule as if you were building an activity into it, and it's essential. And I think people can feel guilty for resting, or I really should be doing the dishwasher, or this has got to be done, I haven't done the washing. But one thing I really, really do is I build in my rest time at different points in the day as well, almost like I'd factor in a meeting or something.
And you said earlier about the importance of having like a supportive work environment. I'm the same, after lots and lots of horrendous experiences, because I will have periods where my career is just on this massive upward trajectory, and then I have a bad couple of years with my condition, and I feel useless, and I'm worried about the impact I'm having and the burden it has on those around me. And you really, I think that's when you find out, the real mettle of people in terms of like if they're going to support you or not through that, if they recognise that you're a good person before and you're going to be a valuable asset afterwards, kind of thing. And I'm in the same boat now where I can go and have a rest. And that afternoon, half an hour is vital to me, because that would literally be the difference between me coming back again at 2:00 and getting another 3 or 4 hours done, or having to say, I need to call in sick. And do you know what I mean? And then all the mental pressure that comes with that, isn't it?
Exactly. And I think if you feel valued as well, that your motivation stays high. And I find that obviously when you're in pain, just as a starting baseline, I mean, I'm never not in pain. my motivation can go quite easily, because I could easily just think, oh, do you know what, I can't do anything because I'm in so much pain. But then I think if I'm allowed to have the rest and recharge, and I'm respected, my motivation for that job and wanting to deliver is going to remain higher.
Yeah.
I mean, before, when I was treated badly, I had no motivation whatsoever, which compounded the issue even more, because I was losing confidence because I was worried about being off sick. And then it was just compounding it. And then I was just in a complete mess. I've lost all my motivation, all my confidence. And then as you said, it's really hard, really hard.
I think it's just also depressing how so many of us can relate to this. I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'm sure people could let us know who are watching live in chat as well. But like it's a horrible experience, because you're dealing with all of the stuff you got with the flare, the extra pain, the loss of mobility, all the life pressures that puts on you, and the worry, the financial worry that comes with that, and if your attendance doesn't improve and things like that. So then to not feel like you're valued, or people don't associate that blip or that moment in time with what you contributed before and will again afterwards. I think for me that's vital. If I can keep that bit, then that gives me hope to ride out the flare. That stops that mental spiral down. But unfortunately, definitely been in places, like you say, where that belief hasn't been there, or people very much judge you on the here and now. And the knock on that can have on you sort of mentally is it's mad. And then that just drags out the flare as well, because it's fueling the stress and everything.
I feel like people allow you a few instances of it. So your first few flares, people might be sympathetic.
Yes.
I'm really sorry to hear that. And then there just seems to come a point where they become frustrated by it, and they think, oh, what, again? And you have that early sympathy, but people don't understand that. I mean, they still say to you, oh, get well soon. And I know that's a thing to say, but it frustrates me. And I know people don't mean it with bad intention, but it really frustrates me, because I'm like, well, I'm not going to get well soon.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I made a habit in the pandemic, when there was lots of like these new Instagram accounts popping up looking for help and support. That I just replaced that with, is there anything you need? Like, because I thought if that was me, I'd want someone to say, how can I help? Or is there anything you need? Rather than get better soon, or worse, have you tried X, Y, and Z? And then that's normally when I block and follow and everything else.
I mean, with osteoarthritis, I get, oh yeah, my nan's got this. Have you tried this? Taking these like amazing turmeric tablets. And I'm not saying turmeric tablets don't help, but it's just the unsolicited advice is just...
Yeah, and don't worry, I've mentioned that particular thing on this show numerous times, so I'll have a lot more haters than one person coming on that. Turmeric, yoga, any of them, they come up regularly on this show, because, like I say, they all have their place. It's the same as like people that rely on painkillers, or people like, I use more sort of like distraction, escapism stuff, and everything has its place in moderation and in a moment in time. There was a time when painkillers were very much needed for me. And there's a time now where community and having these sort of conversations is my sort of way of coping. And a couple of months' time, that changes again to something else. But what I don't want is somebody who has no experience of it suggesting it, or worse, like we see more, post-pandemic and everything. Sorry, I'm ranting now. It should be about you. It's them ones where it's kind of like people that you thought were in our community that are now making those suggestions. They're the ones that hurt me the most. Like if I've got an ignorant friend or work colleague that'll say, oh, have you tried? Then I can let that go, and I can explain to them why that might not be the nicest thing to say. But when you've got somebody that's living with these conditions and then trying to promote and sell, and that they're the ones that really sort of upset me. So we've got a minefield inside and outside of our own communities.
You just haven't asked for it. So very interesting.
Yeah, so yes, it's a challenge. So in terms of so we talked about you've got the multiple conditions, and you got ways of trying to manage those differently and that sort of thing, in terms of finding out, you can recognize the different pains and everything, which is good. How much of a part, before we get on to pregnancy and babies and everything, how much of a part do you think resilience and stuff like that plays, in terms of you have an ability to cope with your pain or the fluctuations of it? How do you sort of manage life events and things with your condition? Because I imagine that must be a challenge.
Yeah, so this has taken me years to master, and I'm by no means 100% perfect on this, but for me, it was a shift of mindset from perhaps more of a victim mentality. Why is this happening to me? I can't cope. This isn't fair. To thinking, hang on, I need to accept that this is what my situation is, it isn't great. It's not fair. But I need to choose to live well with this condition. And for me, I try and break it down into days. So another flippant comment by a doctor said, oh, you'll probably have to be in a wheelchair by the time you're 50. Okay, so that has stuck with me. But instead of going down that minefield of spiraling and catastrophizing, I very much focus on a day by day thing, or if I need to, an hour by hour plan. So it's just a mentality of, okay, I'm not going to let this beat me. I'm going to get through each day. And also pacing as well, pacing myself. So if I go out in the evening, I won't go out in the morning, and vice versa. And for me, having that attitude shift from why is this happening to me, like I can't cope, to this is a bad situation, but I'm going to deal with it, and I'm going to deal with it in this way, that was game changing. And like I did that through, personally for me, therapy worked really well, and through CBT as well. And a lot of work on my emotions and thinking about what triggers my emotions, then the resultant behaviour. So how can I nip these emotions in the bud, or recognise that I'm starting to go down the road of that victim mentality, and then move on to actually think, okay, I need to turn this into a positive action. So what can I do? Can I have a bath, do something calm like that? Or do I need to go for a walk, something exercise? Or do I need to listen to a meditation or anything like that? Go and play with my children. And having that thought and that ability to stop and think, hang on, I'm going down a bad road here. I'm starting to get into a mental health viewpoint and a mindset that is not healthy for me right now. I'm going to do this. And please don't think that I've got this nailed. I go down that victim route still very much, and I will go and cry in my room and just think, why is this happening to me? I'm 34. Like, this isn't fair. I've got 2 young kids. It's really hard. And I think that's normal. I think you've got to allow yourself to have the bad days, because you can't pretend to be positive all the time. That's not realistic. But I think it's about just learning about that mindset and recognizing it, so you can allow yourself to have the bad days, but you can also be like, right, okay, come on, I've got to pull myself together and get back to sort of planning and getting on with things, and scheduling in your rest and scheduling in your pacing. And don't get me wrong, people say, oh, I do pacing. Like, I get my pacing wrong all the time, and I'm cream crackers, and I come in and I was like, well, I've overdone that. I'm a bit screwed. So
I intentionally stayed quiet through all of that because you were making so many good points in my head. I'm thinking I'm clipping all of this, that thing that, like, because I think it's really important that we say, one, that getting to that point where you can recognize when you're going down that path. It took me so long, and I know I've stressed about this so many times on the show, but I'm going to do it again because I think it's really important. Like 4 or 5 years that took me from going into things like pain management and CBT and disability adjustment training and all them other things that are out there, and social prescribe. And it took me 4 to 5 years to get to that point where I could recognize, oh, I'm going down that dark place. And for me, I'll almost like I'll get low mood depression, then I'll try and chase feeling. So like I'll start listening to terribly depressing music or watching terribly depressing documentaries, because I'm almost like trying to like have that release of like when you feel so terrible. And so yeah, it took a very long time. And then the other bit you said that's really important is that we still fail at that. You can have all the insight in the world, you can recognize it and still make bad choices or still slip up because we're human. And I think that whole bit that you said there was just vitally important, because we can't fix our conditions. We have to learn to live with them, and painkillers and treatments and biologics do their bit. But I think that mental recognition and mental coping ability and the way you can equip yourself for that side of the disease is so important, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, it's the way that I cope. Without it, I wouldn't. I would just be in despair and just think, what's the point? I know that sounds really depressing, but it's true. You just think, this is so, like, you live with a level of pain. I read a quote a couple of days ago saying people generally with chronic pain live with a level of pain that most people would find debilitating. But we can't just roll around the floor in agony every day. I mean, that's not socially acceptable, is it? So you just have to get on with it. But if other people could feel your pain, they'd be incapacitated. And I often think I would just love to just pass my pain on to someone for 10 seconds. And for them, I don't think they'd ever have any bad words to say or any questions ever again. They'd be like, do you know what? I get it. It's hard.
I had a very strong disagreement with a charity a couple of years ago that done a campaign around the portrayal of chronic pain in the media. and they wanted to do a film that involved, someone rolling around in bed, and they said, why, how can we get more portrayal of chronic pain in media? And my view was, you're looking at it completely the wrong way, because you and I sitting here, I'm sitting here with a virus. It feels like someone's squeezing my brain into their fist. At the minute, I've got this cracking headache. You're sitting there, you've got kids and all your multiple conditions. So this is what chronic pain looks like. This is, and we function and we find a way. None of us are we have our days where we lay in bed and we're crying behind closed doors, or for me, I talk about them sort of dark hours in the middle of the night where you do it to make sure your kids don't see and that sort of thing. That happens. But every time you see chronic pain or whatever portrayed, it is that rolling. And for me, that rolling around in bed thing just isn't what we do, because we don't have a choice. Because I think if we got to that point, if I allowed myself to get to that mental point, that mental break, that'd be a very dark and terrible outcome for me, and I probably wouldn't be here. So the fact that we have to find these ways to manage and move on. So I think it's why it's really important that we've got you on sharing this, sharing how you cope, sharing about work, and we'll now talk about, family and everything, to show people that you're still in the same amount of pain, but that you've got them ways of functioning and coping, and hopefully it gives people a little bit of hope. So babies, you've now got a new one, 6 months, I think you said, didn't you? How's that been on you and the condition?
You know what? I'm so lucky, because he's literally the most chilled baby on earth. He will literally not cry, and then he'll want milk. He'll scream until you give him milk, and then he's good. He feeds every 4 hours on the dot, which with someone with a chronic illness is fantastic, because I plan my day in 4-hour segments and allow like my rest time and baby class time. But I've done it better this time. So with Callan, my oldest, I had really bad postnatal depression. I was really struggling. I had to come off of I didn't have to. I chose to come off my anti-anxiety medication in my pregnancy. No, that was a bad idea. So I really suffered after that. But I stayed on them this time when I was pregnant with Rowan, and I've been so much better. I've been completely different. I mean, there's been days where Rowan has had to stay in, when I'm in bed, has had to stay in bed with me. But I've got little toys for him in bed, a little thing to help him sit up. There's things that I can do with him that still involve him. And I've just felt just a lot calmer about things. And I think as well with my condition, because I've taken so much time to really research it, do all my therapy and things, I don't get stressed too much anymore. I can actually think about activities I can do that include him and things. And obviously not having to work is a lot better. I've got to the point now and I'm like, how did I even have time for work?
Yeah.
I'm coming back on January the 8th. So I'll have to find a way to add work into it. But I think as well with my husband, I'm extremely, extremely lucky, because he really listens and has taken time to find out about my conditions. He's seen it firsthand. You talked about those dark moments in the middle of the night. Your partners are there. Like last week, he was lifting me on and off the toilet, in and out of bed, So he sees all the versions of me as well. And I'm just so lucky that he really just mucks in. He's a really hands-on dad. He just cares about me and the children. I'm really, really lucky. And I think without that support and that I'd be able to say, look, I really need your help, it would be a lot harder. And I know not everybody has that support circle. And I think that's increasingly hard as well. And I think when my husband's not available, he's got a job where he is a quality manager in a food production place. So he's constantly like on the line and things and watching things being produced. He doesn't necessarily have the time to drop everything and come and help me out. So I've got a few trusted friends, that I've really opened to about my condition. And I think asking for help is so important. I think you can lay in bed and think, they're going to think I'm a bird and they're going to judge me and think, well, why isn't she able to pick her son up or whatever? But I think if you actually reach out and you would just take the time to explain to people about how your condition affects you and why. I think we assume, I certainly did in the past, I assumed people knew what it was like. But no, you tell them why you're suffering, what makes you suffer, and reach out for help. I think as well with chronic illness, we all found out the hard way who are our true friends.
And I feel like at this point I should point out that all of our guests are amazing sports and come onto the shows without any pre-prepared questions. Like we know what topic we're going to talk about, but we try to keep it as like free-flowing conversation. But the reason I say that, Rebecca, because everything you just said in that last answer is pretty much messaging that we put out on here every single week. So it was like the most perfect answer. So the vital, that recognising the support group and the value of that and the role it plays in between all the appointments. And let's be honest, the appointments are rarer than ever now. Well, they are here in the UK, and it's such a valuable thing. And it's one of the things our peer support, project, whatever you want to call it, we campaign for, because with the advent of things like patient initiated follow-up and appointments getting less and less and relying on people to ask for them, if you've got that support network, like I'm sure there must have been times when your husband's probably intervened or whatever and said you need to get help, or have you got to, I know my wife's doing it all the time, like get to doctors when I maybe wouldn't go. And so I don't know, do you feel like, would it even work for you without, I know it's hard to imagine sort of like a what if, but would that even work? How would that work for you if you didn't have somebody sort of like supporting you, pushing you towards help? Like, where would you go for that help?
Well, what's really strange is I'm literally the administrator of our life. Like, I do all the bills, I do all this, everything, the food shopping, everything. But when it comes to my chronic illness, my husband's, he literally, you almost don't recognise it yourself. And he's very much like, go to your mum, ask your mum for support, go and ask your friends to pick your kid up from school. And another really, really, really important thing, I can't emphasise this enough, is if people aren't adding value into your life or are not understanding your chronic illness or causing issue, it's really important to try and cut those people from your life, because I've done that with a couple of people recently, and it's just very, very hard to keep up the friendship with people. I mean, I've had one friend say to me, it's really difficult having you as a friend with chronic illness because I want to do something and then you end up cancelling. I understand it's difficult for them, but I think it's almost a disclaimer when you have a friend to say, look, these things are going to happen on occasion. And I've got so many great friends as well, like who understand when I cancel last minute and I can't do things, and they don't judge me for it. But quite a few that don't either. So I think as well as having that support network is vital, it's also it's easier said than done cutting people out. Trust me, I'm not going to make it sound easy. But people that, I think as I get older, people that don't add value to my life, I'm like, what am I doing? I think you entertain it more when you're younger, but now I'm just like, no.
Yeah, I could totally relate to that. And I think the only caveat I give myself on that is, like, if I haven't let people in, then I cut them some slack, because I definitely went in my younger years, I hid it, especially when I was playing sport and music, and I didn't want to be judged on it. And I think for those people that have known me for years and seen the worst of me, seen me in hospitals, etc., then there is no excuse. Especially that is my biggest gripe, that whole cancelling it and making it about them, making that sound how they're disappointed, as if we're not, as if we've just bailed for the fun of it. But yeah, I think as well, I learned a lot through the pandemic about picking my battles, because like you say, I think when you're younger, you entertain that stuff a lot more. And in the pandemic, I found myself people that were commenting on my absence or my attendance at work or the risk that might put on my family. And I'm well aware of these things. And I used to sort of be a bit like a Jack Russell and just keep going back and forth. And now my way is rather than sort of cutting them off, I just don't engage. I've got so much better at that. It's taken a lot of therapy and CBT and stuff like that. But now it's just because my instinct is to defend and fight. And I guess that's why I'm an advocate sort of thing. But I'm getting so much better at not engaging. And all right, you might spend a minute where you have to breathe, don't reply, don't say nothing back. But the energy that you then get back in from not having that to and fro. And then I find if they're interested, they'll stick around. If they won't, they'll move on. And I'm cool with that.
And I obviously think it's how much impact they have on your life. So if it's someone at work, obviously I'm able to sort of bite my tongue a little bit. But ones that I was talking about in those examples were friends that I've had, for years and years and years. Perhaps friends that served me well during my party days, when things weren't so deep. And also your lives naturally move in different directions as well. But it's like firefighting about your condition, and feeling all of that guilt. I mean, we can all relate to guilt with our chronic conditions. But if you've cancelled, why then do you have to sit with guilt about how you've made that other person feel because you can't do it? And then it's guilt. You feel guilty enough, don't you, cancelling? And you feel sad and you feel disappointed and you've got that that fear of missing out, and you think, oh, am I going to be asked to come out again? Am I going to lose this friendship? And then if someone tries to make you feel bad about it, it's just compounding the guilt. And I really struggle with that even now. I get a lot of anxiety around cancelling and things. I can advocate for myself really well at work. I'm like fine with that. But when it comes to sort of closer emotional relationships, I'm less confident. It's really funny. Yeah.
And I think the bit you said that resonated with me, and I don't know about anyone else, but that's like you said, like naturally our lives move different directions. They do. You have family, you have kids, and we've all got those friends that don't do that, and then they still expect you to be able to go till 3 o'clock in the morning and drinks and this sort of thing. And I think where I struggle with that is because like having a long-term health condition like you from a very young age and everything, this is one constant in your life. So then I find myself having not a lot of tolerance because like this has always been me, this always will be me. That bit of me is not going to change. So I then really struggle when people don't accept that or want to work with it because I have no choice, you have no choice, and it's just always going to be there, isn't it?
And I think it plays into that point I made earlier about that people will be tolerant about it the first couple of times, but then it just gets to a point where certain people become frustrated and make it about them, and they don't actually think at the end of the day, nobody feels as bad as cancelling as I do. Like I'm missing out on this as well, you know. It was a plan I clearly wanted to do, otherwise I wouldn't have made it. And now I'm not able to do it. So like it's just as hard, if not more, on the person.
Yeah, and that first few times are so true. Whether that's work or social events, it's just like you have how quickly it can go from sympathy to inconvenience for them.
Yeah,
as if it's not destroying, so it's soul destroying for us as well. That is such a common thing.
2 or 3 instances, and then that's it, gone, out the door.
And I don't know if you get many infections with sort of our treatments like I do, like because I get a lot of viruses, infections. And when it's like a virus like I got now, there is nothing you can do. If you got no fever or whatever, like if it's not obvious that I've got a chest infection, they can't give me antibiotics. What are they targeting? Nobody knows with a virus. You just feel awful. And you'll get the comments like, oh, you got one of them again then. Oh, that come back again, did it? As if it's like, no, this is always going to be a thing. This is a cyclical thing that's going to happen every winter. I've now got a 4-year-old just bringing everything home into the house. And there's no like coincidence that my infections have got worse since becoming a dad. I don't know if you've had a sort of similar experience or if it even applies to you. But, trying to explain to people that is just a thing. That it's like the flares. They're going to come back. It's not because I did anything or I didn't fix it properly last time. But I think the trouble is people are so used to that sort of like triage approach, aren't they? You break something, you fix it. And if you do it right, it's not a problem anymore. And that doesn't apply to us.
But you had a flare up a week ago. You got another one? Especially in this weather. If there's any sort of change of weather, or now when it's really cold, I can really feel it. I mean, my husband jokes and said, my knees know when it's raining. Like, oh, is it going to rain? Just ask Bex's knees. So... It's true. It's true.
Yeah, no. So we get lots of people saying, I don't have that so much, but it's my skin, my psoriasis knows when. But I think that's just because it's colder or whatever, it dries or whatever. But we get lots of people on there talking about being sort of like weather people because of what their joints are doing a couple of days before.
We all need to go and live like in Australia. I mean, the UK is a terrible choice for weather, isn't it?
Yeah, I actually had my rheumatologist told my parents when I was younger about if we could consider moving to Spain, that would be good for me, which wasn't really an option when you got 4 kids and, not exactly sort of well-off family or anything. And one thing I did find out when I went to Singapore earlier this year, humidity is just as bad as the UK weather. Oh my word. Humidity is the most painful thing my joints have experienced compared to the UK weather. So, don't go too far towards hot climates. Make sure it's sunny rather than humid. That was not pleasant. I'm conscious of your time, and you've been brilliant. Like I feel like I could just keep asking you stuff because I know what answer I'm going to get back, and it's going to be the right one. And I say right one, we've all got experiences, but you know what I mean. You have very similar views on cope with these things to me, which is really nice to hear. I suppose before you do go, is there any sort of like tips? Because you've now got a little one. You've already got you have a child. You've got a great job. Really good career. You've had them sort of negative experiences, but you're still sort of doing well. Is there any sort of tips, advice, things you could give for people? Like, because we do get a lot of people coming to chat or the support groups where sometimes they feel like it's almost a bit like a death sentence with these things. So that there is life beyond the chronic illness sort of thing.
Yeah, so interestingly, the title of this is like Degenerative Arthritis, sort of effectively, how can you do it all? But the truth is, you can't do it all of the time, and it's really important to understand that. And I think now I've noticed that people seem to wear burnout as a badge of honour.
Yeah, I have a big issue with that.
Same. But sort of doing everything. So you can be super mum, you can be great at work, you can do everything, but effectively you're not allowing your body to have that rest. You're not doing things that actually help you. And then effectively it just all compounds and gets worse and worse and worse. So I think for me, I have my little things. So I have a bath with Epsom salts, really, really helps. And just that time to chill out as well. I've also got an oil burner, which sounds quite basic, but I put like a sleep mist in it, and that's wonderful. That it just helps create a relaxing environment. I've done meditation before. I find that wonderful. Wine? No, I can't really say that, can I?
No. So everything has its place. Like moderation again.
I like to do things that I enjoy. So when I feel up for it, cooking dinners and things like that with my husband. But I don't know if, I'm sure you've gone over this before, but the spoon theory.
Yes, yeah.
So using my spoons in the right way, and also doing things that I want to do. So I'm quite guilty of being a yes person and saying yes to everything. But now I try and take a bit of control and say yes to things that I want to do, rather than doing things that I have to do. That I don't have to do, but that I feel almost forced or bound to do. So I think doing that as well, and spending time with people that fill up your cup, like 100%. And then also having that time on your own. I mean, I'm really lucky with 2 children that if I need to, I can go and spend an hour in bed because my husband will look after them. But I think as well is not being afraid to ask for that rest or advocate for that yourself to get that rest.
I was going to say as well, it can just be those simple things, because I describe living with chronic pain as noise. It feels like noise. It's like having someone in your ear. And my wife will recognise those days where I just need to go up and have a hot bath. I use salts as well. I put a playlist on, either it's like a piano music meditation thing. Sometimes it's just a podcast, so I can get lost in an audio book or whatever. And I don't know about you, just for that hour or 45 minutes, you just switch off a bit from dealing with that noise. And then you're in a better place to deal with it again afterwards. It doesn't fix anything, does it? It just gives you a better starting off point. And also, I feel like I should say about how we talked about earlier, any of them people that are saying that they're doing it all and winning at life, it's a lie. I absolutely do not believe that them people that have posted all that stuff and saying, oh, I got the job and I got the kids and I got all this amazing stuff and I have no setbacks. That I can't stress that enough, that you are getting a very filtered, one-sided sort of view of the story, because you and I have had those similar experiences where you do break, or you need that mental health support and that sort of thing, and frankly portraying only the good side of it is really dangerous. So thank you for sharing them bits as well, because I think it's really important that we caveat that you can succeed, you can do well, but it does also have its bumps in the road, doesn't it?
But allowing yourself to have those bumps as well, and not punishing yourself for that, and just think, okay, this is part and parcel of it. Today's a bad day and I'm just going to accept it's a bad day, and I'm going to do my best on this day. Someone said once, if you've got 40% energy and you do 40% of what you need to do, that's effectively 100% effort, isn't it? So
yeah, I had a CBT guy say exactly the same thing. He talked about university grades, and he said, like, you can have 40% and that's a pass. And if all you've got is that, in you to do that, then you pass and you got 100% of what you want to do. And that was very good at reframing, because I was still judging myself from what I used to be able to do. And I think as well, with chronic illness, we forget that it's not just our bodies deteriorate or our joints deteriorate. Everybody gets older as well. And obviously, I'm not going to be able to do at 39 what I could do at 20. But in my head, it's all my arthritis' fault. Do you know what I mean? And I've lost all that stuff. And it's really easy to forget that there is just, unfortunately, a natural progression of time as well. So, yeah, it's a really good way of looking at it. I'm really conscious I've kept you longer. It's been amazing chatting, Rebecca. So thank you for giving up a little bit of extra time to stay with us. Where can people find you on social media if they want to sort of follow you or pick up the conversation a bit more?
So I have a page on Instagram, as I mentioned, which is chronically then _Bex, BEX. I post a lot of quotes on there. I do quite a lot of sort of Instagram versus reality, which is what you've touched on there. I did one even the other day where I put a beautiful picture of my Christmas tree up, and next to it there's just all these toys and myths, and I was like, okay, this is what it really looks like. And I try to do that a bit more with chronic illness. So, well, yesterday I went to the zoo with my son. Today I'm in bed, to show those two sides. And I mean, obviously, if I'm lucky enough to be invited again, I would love to come back on here and do some more stuff with you as well, and anything that I can do. And obviously as well, if anybody wants to ask any questions to my page personally, I'm more than happy to answer any questions. And if there's any particular topics people wanted me to come back and sort of delve in more, I'm more than happy to do that as well. It's no problem at all.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. And you're absolutely, like I say, you've given so many great answers. It's like hearing myself back. It's been awesome. Like, I don't know about you, like when you do the advocacy stuff, it is up. There is areas of contention, whether it's the sort of more the herbal or well-being kind of approach, or the best life filtered stuff, or like, the other stuff that goes on social media. And every now and then you'll find yourself venturing into those areas and thinking, am I just wrong? So to hear somebody else sort of talk about those same sort of things, it refills my cup and reassures me that what we're doing here is right. So that was very much appreciated, just from a totally personal perspective.
You can pay me later, Joe.
Yes, thanks. Yeah, there was absolutely no setup here, guys. This isn't like a stooge thing or something. Because the regulars on the show will know, and anyone listening to this back on the podcast will know how many times I've talked about distraction and dealing with pain and those bad experiences and support networks and, resilience and just all those themes come up tonight. So yeah, it's just perfect. So you're absolutely guaranteed to be welcome back at any point when you'd like to rejoin us, or if you're doing anything in the future of your advocacy, Rebecca, that you'd like to tell us about, then yeah, please do get in touch. But for now, thank you so much for giving up your time.
It's been a pleasure. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.